Now, it's been a while since I have reviewed an episode of Impact on this podcast. It's probably been a good 10 years. TNA has been getting a lot of buzz lately with the rebrand. They got all new title belts, which look great. I still have no idea what a digital media title is or what purpose it serves, or why Tommy Dreamer up until last weekend was still a champion in 2024. That's a mystery to me. But this week's main event, it's an early candidate for Match of the Year between Will Ospreay and Josh Alexander. I wanted to see that match, so I decided to watch the show. This was the first episode marking the return of TNA as a brand. They even brought back the old Cross the Line theme. Tom Hannafin and Matt Raywalt, they're a good announce team. WWE made a mistake letting Hannafin go because if they held on to him, he would be in the chair on SmackDown right now instead of Kevin Patrick. They open with an X Division 6-way, which if you're a new fan or if you're a lapsed fan of TNA tuning in, this was a great way to open the show, spotlighting the X Division. The X Division is what put this company on the map. It's what differentiated them from WWE and everything else that was going on at the time. It was Jake Something beating Kushida, Laredo Kid, Trey Miguel, Speedball Mike Bailey, and El Hijo del Vikingo. Jake is a beast. Until we brought him into House of Glory last year and I got to see, him up close and in person, I didn't fully appreciate how good this guy is, but he's great. I can't believe PCO is still out there doing the Frankenstein gimmick and people haven't gotten tired of it. Or maybe they have, I don't know. But it's goofy, but the presentation of it when they wheel him out on stage and they put the shocks to him and he gets up, I get a kick out of that. I still marvel at the fact that he's doing moonsaults at almost 60 years old. He moves around better than Muta does. It's good to see the grizzled young veterans doing their thing. They picked up a win over Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian, the two TNA originals. And then, after the loss, Kaz turned on EY. And he yelled at him and said 2024 was supposed to be his year. I'll bet Kazarian's been saying that each of the last 5 years. It's not going to work out. Nic Nemeth was the big signing at Hard to Kill. They brought in Nic Nemeth. Clearly, they're building him to an eventual run as the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. But they're not just throwing him into the deep end of the pool just yet. He's going to be feuding with at least one person, hopefully more than one, before they eventually get to that match with Moose. He was interrupted during this segment here. He came out for a promo. But before that, he said Hard to Kill was a hell of a moment for him. From start to finish, there was something in the air, and he was happy to be a part of it. He said in 19 years, he's done a lot of things. He was very fortunate to rack up a lot of accomplishments, but he did it all in one world. He says he's going to become TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and when he wins it, he's going to celebrate with everyone, and it'll be the best day of his career. He says he's done it in the past, and this is the first time he'll do it as Nic Nemeth. Steve Macklin interrupted. He came down to the ring, another former WWE star who left and really transformed himself. Macklin agreed with everything that Nemeth had to say. He says he was in the same world that Nick was in. He and Nick are very similar, but there's one difference. He says when he says something, he means it. Nick is a phony. He says Nick says he gives so much to the business, but he's here to take. And Macklin says no one is going to ask about Nic Nemeth. They're going to ask what happened to Dolph Ziggler, which is true. RVD has talked about that when he left WWE to go work for TNA many years ago. And then eventually he came back to WWE. He said he heard from so many people did you just stop wrestling? Where'd you go for 5 years or whatever it was? And meanwhile, he was on cable television wrestling for another promotion, for a national promotion. And there were plenty of fans who were probably just in that WWE bubble who just thought this guy retired or he decided to just take an extended break. I guarantee you there are WWE fans who saw CM Punk walk out there at Survivor Series and said, man, where's he been for the last 10 years? They have no idea. So that's actually very true. And Nemeth ended up hitting him with a zigzag, which he is now calling the Danger Zone. Obviously, the long-term plan is a match with Moose. Maybe it's Slammiversary, maybe a Bound for Glory. Maybe they tease it out for the rest of the year. And they build to Nemeth's big moment. But the main event is what I was looking forward to. It was Will Ospreay in his one and only TNA match. Now, he was in there wrestling Mike Bailey at Bound for Glory in October, but they were not TNA. They were still Impact. And the reason the TNA initials are so special to him is because he grew up a TNA kid. When he was growing up, he was watching TNA wrestling. He was watching people like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. And so for him, it was a very big deal that he be able to go out there before he starts with AEW and he be able to wrestle at least one TNA match. And so he got his wish. And Josh Alexander, I mean, his work speaks for itself. He's become Mr. TNA. You put these two guys in the ring, this was their second match together. You put these two guys in the ring and it would be impossible for them to have anything but a very good match. They went out there and had a great match. There was a Tiger Driver by Ospreay through a table from the apron down to the floor. That was pretty nutty. But in the end, he put over Josh Alexander. Alexander put him down with the C4 spike. Scott D'Amore came down to the ring, the TNA president, when the match was over. He talked about loving this business since he was 4 years old, sitting in the arms of his dying grandfather in his hospital room watching pro wrestling at his bedside. He says he spent 30 plus years in this business as a wrestler first and then later on doing other things, working for Jeff Jarrett and TNA. He said he saw TNA at its lowest point when he came back in 2017, where Bruce Pritchard called TNA a dead corpse. And everybody booed. Everybody booed Bruce. He said he watched the fans, he watched Josh Alexander, he watched Will Ospreay and others roll up their sleeves, reach into TNA's chest, and manually pump that fucking heart until blood flowed again. And he said TNA chants are the sound that rings in his ears, the sound that never died because of people like Josh and a TNA kid like Will. He said it never died because it inspired the locker room and it gave everybody something to fight for. And he said even if he drops dead tonight, he's happy because of Hard to Kill. That would have been funny in a very morbid kind of way if he would have dropped dead immediately after a pay-per-view called Hard to Kill. He said he's happy because of TNA being back, and he's happy that we got to see two of the best in the world have the match of their life. And he screamed that TNA is back and it's never going away again. This is a very fiery, Paul Heyman-esque rally the troops type of speech here from Scott D'Amore, who, to his credit, has done a lot to try to change the perception that people have had about this company. He is not going to be completely successful. There is going to always be an aura or a stain on this company that is there that people cannot look past because it's just hard to wash that off from the past regimes. But he has been trying very hard to build a lot of goodwill with the fans, and they have put together a very good roster of talent, so I give him credit for trying. But I got a question. I was going to use this in the mailbag later. I may as well use it here. I got a question from Luke in Arizona. Luke is a big TNA fan, and he wrote in and he was asking, what can TNA do to grow its audience, right? Is it a case of doing more advertising, or is it a case just of migrating to a larger channel? It's about accessibility to the show, above all else. The product is good. I can't say that they really offer anything that you can't find from WWE and AEW. You know, the X Division stuff, for example, that we see on this show, it was a very innovative thing when TNA first debuted the X Division. And they had a very, very dedicated, very talented core group of talent that the people got behind. Christopher Daniels, and you had Low Key and Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, all those guys that they had on the roster at the time. It was a special time in TNA history, but you could not find wrestling, especially on television in any capacity, that was offering something like that. WWE wasn't doing that. You know, maybe Ring of Honor was, but Ring of Honor didn't have TV. But the problem is now it's been over 20 years since then, and as great as the X Division stuff is, you're really not getting anything that you can't see on an episode of Raw sometimes, or on Dynamite, or Collision, any given week. You can put the TV on and see the same thing. Sometimes even with the same people, like with Vikingo on this show. But the number one thing would be moving to a network with a larger footprint than Access TV. If an independent promotion got on Access TV, that would be amazing for them because they would have television. The bar has to be higher for a company that has been around for 20 plus years and used to be on one of the top cable channels in the country. We are far removed from the Spike era. And so long as this show is on Access, they're not going to grow their audience. It's just not going to happen. And you can put on the greatest wrestling in the world. If most people don't have a way to access it, or they have to pay extra for the channel that it's on, like I would have to do with YouTube TV for their sports package, your audience is not going to grow. Marketing and advertising is very important as well, but TV comes first. I thought this week's show was very good. It had an excellent main event. They may never be able to get to where they once were. But if they continue to put on shows like this, I think their fans would be very happy, right? In the absence of creating many new fans, it's important for them to build brand loyalty with their existing fans so they keep watching and supporting the product. Trinity is going to be challenging Jordynne Grace in a hard-to-kill rematch for the Knockouts title. It's already been taped. It was taped on the 14th. It airs this Thursday. She has since finished up all of her commitments, Trinity has, and she is free to sign with whoever she chooses, which could mean a Royal Rumble return. The lineup for this Thursday, if you want to check out Impact on Access, they've got Jordynne Grace defending against Trinity. Nic Nemeth is going to make his in-ring TNA debut against Zachary Wentz of the Rascals, and the Motor City Machine Guns are teaming with Kazuchika Okada in his first TNA match since 2011 to take on Moose, Eddie Edwards, and Brian Myers.